have an amazing guest today, Alison Larkin. She is the international best-selling author of 3 books, Stay, Why Can't I Be You, The People We Keep, her most newest recent book. And I'm so happy to have you on the show today. Alison, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much, Erin. I'm really happy to be talking with you. My name is Alison Larkin. I also have written as Allie Larkin, and you got Stay and Why Can't I Be You. I also wrote a book called Swimming for Sunlight that came out just before, it came out in 2019, I think. And then this book, The People We Keep, I wrote as Alison Larkin. And I started writing this novel in 2006. And I've been writing it on the side of all my other books. So this one, I spent, 15 years dreaming about these characters. So this is, it's beyond my wildest dreams to have this happening now, even though I had those other 3 books. Yeah, this is my baby. And I love my other books too, but this one is it's like handing my whole heart over to everybody. And it's been so beautiful to see people connect with it.
A very emotionally charging book too. I felt like I wrote notes on this as I was reading it. I read it in one day.
Oh my gosh, it's a long book.
It was like on a weekend. I read it like in the morning until the evening, and just loved it. I'm a 90s teenager kid myself. It'll put me on the dated map there, but so I loved all the 90s references of the clothes and the cars and everything like that. I just love that. So I love taking that trip back to the 90s because that's when it starts out and that's when it, kind of goes through that time. And I felt like this book will break your heart and lift it up. And it also inspires resilience too.
Oh, thank you.
I feel like it, also a family book, but a reminder that not every family is perfect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I am in the real life thing here. Just realized my email is on. So there we go. No more email abuse. Sorry about that.
Okay, we didn't hear anything.
But yeah, I think there's the family that, the family that you're born into. There's your relatives, and sometimes your relatives are also your family.
Pause for a minute.
Oh, am I back?
Oh, oh no. There you are.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Okay.
The thrill of being live.
Yes.
So I think there's there's your relatives who, and sometimes your relatives are family. And then there's also the people who you meet along the way who take care of your heart and you feel something real for them and they follow you through your life, and that's your family. You get to make your family too. And I really wanted to give credit to that because there are people in my life that I don't share genes with, but they mean the world to me. And I'm so fortunate for that.
Oh, I felt like that was her. I don't want to give too many spoilers, but I feel like that was her dad's ex-girlfriend in there. That was her constant, her lean-to. And there were so many times in this book I was so mad. I was like, what? Who would do that? And just angry for April. But I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. Your characters are so believable and connecting and inspiring. And the twists and turns in there were just, those reminders that life can be topsy-turvy and just what you make of it. And you really had so many different characters in there that I think we can all identify with in some ways in our lives. And that was so good. What made this so personal for you in this book? Were there parts of you that you identified with this, or how was this your baby?
What I always say about my books is that the facts aren't real, but the feelings are. Yeah. So, I did not grow up in, I guess to say that this book is about April, who is 16 years old. She grew up in a motorless motorhome in a very small town outside of Buffalo. And that's not my existence. I grew up outside of New York City and in a house. And, but I definitely had a time in my 20s where I really struggled. I dropped out of college for a while. I was really trying to find myself. And was having a difficult time. I think I figured out that I lived in, I think, 5 places in 3 states in 2 years or something like that at one point. And I worked at a biker bar at one point. So when you have like April is playing guitar in all of these bars and restaurants, that is definitely texture from my own life where I did those things too. I worked in those environments and met the kind of people that just grab on you to your heart and make a big difference. I do play guitar a little bit like April, but she's a better musician than I am. I did also study voice for 10 years. So music was a huge part of my life. And that was something I definitely was absorbing myself in. I started taking guitar lessons again while I was writing the last couple of drafts of this book, to make sure that I had all the texture of what it feels like to play music and lose yourself in music. So there's a lot of things in the book where I can go back and say, here's the experience I had in my life that led me to write this. But April and I are different people with different life experiences too.
I could feel that this was like 15 years in the making. There was a lot of depth to it, and just a very, I don't know, just a really fun, I wouldn't say fun, it is fun. It was fun to read, but it was very thought-provoking too. Sometimes I'd have to close it and put it down because I get mad that some of the characters did what they did. And then, my husband's like, he likes to tell me this, okay, this is a book. Okay, this is fiction. And I'm like, it is not just a book. He's like, stop it. And I'm like, this is work. And he's like,
that's work.
It is work.
Yeah.
But what are
My husband likes to ask me, are you crying about a real person or an imaginary person? Is this about a character? Yeah.
So you have Stay out, and you wrote that 11 years ago.
Yeah.
What is Stay about?
Stay is about a woman named Van who is in love with her best friend's boyfriend. They were friends first. She was friends with Peter, and then Peter met Janie through Van, and then Janie and Peter fell in love, and Van ends up being the maid of honor at their wedding. And she's trying so hard to be a good friend, but she's just also completely heartbroken. And after the wedding, she has a little bit too much to drink and accidentally orders a German Shepherd off the internet from Slovakia. And Van thinks she's getting this little tiny puppy, but she ends up with a dog who's over 100 pounds and trained in Slovakia. And then, yeah. So
I actually love dogs so much, so that would not be a terrible thing.
Yeah, it works. It's a happy book. And even though she gets her dog in an incredibly irresponsible way, she does learn how to be a responsible dog owner and do everything right.
What is Why Can't I Be You about? And if you guys are watching this, I have these all pulled up down below so you can check them out. That one looks like a really fun one too. And I see a dog in that too. So I see a theme here.
Yes, my first 3 books did have dogs in them. So Why Can't I Be You is about a woman named Jenny Shaw, who is having the worst day of her life, going on her first big business trip. She thinks she's about to be proposed to, and her boyfriend breaks up with her at the airport and drives off with all her luggage in the back of his car. And she shows up at the hotel where the conference she's going to takes place. And she's getting into the elevator, and somebody calls. She thinks they call Jenny, but they call out Jessie. And this woman gets into the elevator and hugs her, and it turns out there's a high school reunion happening at the same time, and they think she's a long-lost classmate. And she just really needed that hug, and she really needs a friend, and she sort of progressively falls into pretending to be this woman, Jessie Morgan, who no one's seen since high school graduation. And kind of falls into Jessie Morgan's life and finds some new sides of herself in the process.
Adding that to my Amazon cart.
Oh, thank you.
And then we have Swimming for Sunlight. What is that one about? That one looks really good too. And I noticed another dog, which I'm completely excited about.
Yes. Swimming for Sunlight is about a woman who gives up everything in her divorce to gain custody of her dog, Barkimedes, which she calls Bark. Yeah, I mean, it's a reasonable thing.
Yes.
How would you let go of your dog, you know? And so she ends up having to move in with her grandmother, Nan, and in the process finds out that Nan used to be a roadside attraction mermaid. There were these mermaid performers like Wikiwachi. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
That sounds interesting though.
Yes, there still are mermaid performers, and it's actually had a resurgence, which is really exciting. But they breathe through a hose, like an air hose underwater, and then perform wearing tails and doing all these tricks and acrobatics underwater. And so she finds out that her grandmother did that and helps Nan get all the mermaids back together. So they're planning a mermaid show with all these 70-year-old women who are mermaids, which is so much. It was so much fun to write. I loved writing it so much.
Wow. Okay, well, adding these all.
Thank you.
So awesome. What are you currently reading right now?
Oh my gosh, I just finished Apples Never Fall.
Ooh,
oh, it was so
good.
good. I am so ashamed that I had not read Leanne Moriarty before, and I'm fascinated by her characters. They're incredible. They're absolutely incredible.
I think besides the newest one, and she's great. She hasn't
really
written for a while. I listened to a podcast she did recently. She took a break for a few years for this one.
Oh wow!
Like a 2-year gap. She usually put one out every year, and this one was every 2 years. And she said it was a lot of research to put this one together. And that was actually, I think, a Zibby Owens, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books one recent. You have to pull it up and listen to it. That was if you read the book and liked it, you'd really like listening to how that book came about.
Yeah, I absolutely would. It was very textured, and there was a lot about competitive tennis, and it was wonderful. It's really a great book.
What are you watching right now? I always like to ask people, what are you reading? What are you watching?
Speaking of, I have been watching 9 Perfect Strangers, which I really like. I haven't gotten to watch the latest episode, but I really liked that. Ted Lasso, obviously. I think everybody's watching that. I'm trying to think of what else I've watched recently. I haven't had a lot of time, but I'm really excited about, fall TV coming up again.
Yes, I know. I'm ready for TV to restock after their hiatus. And movies.
Yes. Also, my friend Therese Feller had an Amazon show based on her book, which is always a fun one if you're looking for something. Z, a novel of Zelda Fitzgerald.
Okay.
They made Christina Ricci was in the adaptation of it for Amazon, which was really great. So that's a cool thing to watch, especially if you love historical fiction.
Yes, I do. I read a very eclectic. I have a lot of guests, different things, and they're like, "Do you read this?" Yes. Yes. So yeah, that's great. What are you currently working on? I know your last book was The People We Keep, which was phenomenal. Just came out. What's next in the hopper for you?
Well, the same way that The People We Keep took me such a long time, in the process of writing that book, I realized that I could start more than one book at a time, and that the process of letting something marinate and considering the characters as I develop as a person was really helpful. I started doing that when I had other ideas. Instead of feeling like, oh, I have to finish this, I have to be a completionist, I started realizing, well, I can just collect as much as I need to about this idea as I go and have something to go back to. So I don't have anything I can talk about in specifics yet, but I have 2 books that I have a lot down for, and I'm sort of trying to figure out which one I want to make my main project at the moment. But I'm excited about it. But they're both kind of in line with The People We Keep in terms of the heart and the tone and the depth.
We were talking, I think, a little bit before the live. I said I felt like this had Jewel vibes. And you know what? Have you read her book, Never Broken?
Yeah, I listened to the audiobook of that. That was fantastic. Yeah.
I actually went to her family's homestead this summer.
Oh, wow.
You can stay there. It's an Airbnb. And stay there at her aunt's. And we stayed in a little shack it didn't have any power or electricity or anything or running water. And we stayed there for like 3 days. And it was the most incredible way to recharge. We had no distractions, just a private beach and just a gorgeous view. And I had read her book when it came out, I think 5 or 6 years ago, but her story with how she, kind of lived on the road and wrote her songs and played in bars kind of gave April vibes, and made me think about that in the book and how she grew up with maybe a similar parent in some ways.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah.
So I can really see that. I don't know if you thought about that when you were writing her, but I was just like, wow, I feel like she was just very believable. April was very believable as a character, after knowing like Jewel's story and stuff. So, and I love music, so that kind of went with it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
I love Jewel. I think she's amazing. I had written a bunch of the book because I only listened to it a couple years ago, but it was like reading, like listening to a kindred spirit in terms of thinking of April and her, and she writes so beautifully.
She really does. And she has a really nice family too. I think they're just really nice people. They were very welcoming, very normal, very down to earth. And the place where she grew up was really beautiful. Except for one part, my husband we walked out onto this cliff edge, and they're very eclectic people, very artsy and just, whimsical. And she's like, come on down here, hold on to this branch. And my husband's like, why are we holding on to the branch? And he looks down and he's like, nope. And he walks back up. It was like 100-foot drop.
Oh my goodness.
Like rocks at the bottom, like a cliff. And I thought it was great. I was like, yes, I'm going to bring my Kindle out here and read, and it's going to be the best place to sit. And she said, my niece Jewel likes to sit out here when she comes. And I'm like, even better.
Fantastic.
My husband just commented in our chat. He said, yeah, freaked me out a bit. It was a very scary drop, but it was a beautiful place. And she was just so cool. She's like, let's go sit on this cliff. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, no.
I'm in the no category on that. I have a hard time with heights. You're so brave.
I'll have to send you a picture of it, because he did take a picture of me reading on my Kindle out on this cliff, and it's really out there. So you have to hold on to these things or you'll fall. But
wow, that's amazing.
That was pretty fun. So what advice would you have for aspiring writers or creatives?
The thing I think I had to work really hard to get back to and to understand. When I was in college, I read Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott, which is about writing, and it's a beautiful book. And at one point she talks about how the writing is the best part. And I realized in my journey in all of this, because I had a lot of times where I was working on this book and thinking, oh, I think it's ready, and then giving it to someone who didn't quite see what I was trying to do and had to find a whole new team again. And this book has been an exercise in persistence for me. But the thing that actually kept me going was the writing, is the fact that I love April and Margot, and I love these characters, and it was always my happy place to go back to them. I wrote significant drafts every yeyear. It's actually weird because it's fall again, and I would always make sure to do a draft around this time, and now it's done, and I feel like something's missing in this really interesting way. But what I realized is that the writing is the joy. The writing actually is the good part, and that's what Anne Lamott said. And there's also the other part that is amazing, is getting to connect with readers. And that is just a joy, especially with this book on this level. I feel like I'm friends with anyone who really sees April's heart. I feel like immediately I'm like, oh, I also know I love you. Nice to meet you. So that's absolutely a joy. But I think we have to work as writers to keep the writing joyful and to keep the writing ours and protect it. It's worth protecting, and we can get feedback and we can get support. But we also have to keep our hearts safe so that we want to write, and that writing has good feelings. I think that's really important.
I think sometimes when you read, when I was reading The People We Keep, you picture April as being older than she is, and she brings you back to it. She's like, I'm like 20, making these grown-up decisions, but she's had to grow up so quickly that you forget that. And I remember parts of the book where I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I would do that. And then I'm like, she's 20.
Yeah.
She's not, I think she was like at the end there, wasn't she like 20?
She was 19. She was
19.
She was going on 20. Yeah.
But you would think she was like 26 at the way she lived life. And
yeah,
that was so good. I do think there's a lot of really talented people out there, but there's two really good superpowers that I always say outperforms talent. And it's persistency and consistency. And with those two things married together, they can outbeat talent. And sometimes people will peak with their talent and they may not have the other two qualities that make them have the superpowers. But I think that persistency and consistency can make you far more talented than someone who just out the gate was talented. And that is so true. And I'm glad that you were persistent for 15 years and in getting this book out. So now that you kind of have the itch with April, I have to ask, could you write a sequel?
I hadn't actually thought of it, and I have started to think about it because I actually sat down and thought, well, what happens to all these characters next? And I built them up to know what would happen to them. So I actually have a very concrete idea. I have to figure out if there's
like we have more. I don't want to give away any spoilers, but with how it ended, with what she had going on, I felt like we could totally move on into that direction and talk more about that. And then, I don't know, that'd be really cool. That's something to think about. The people we keep, you could have the people we love or something. I don't know.
That's a good one.
I feel like this could go more. And I felt like too, when it ended, I was like, but I wasn't done.
That's how I felt when I finished writing it. I was like, I'm not sure I'm ready to let these people go. And it did end with her starting on a very different adventure. So
yeah. And so I think that adventure could evolve in that way. And yeah, that'd be really cool. Something to think about.
Yeah, I'm not ruling it out.
You can be something that one day you'll be like, I'm gonna throw that out there and make something more. And you know what? It could even be years from now. Who knows?
It's true. I mean, that's the wonderful thing about books is that they just take the time they take, and that's the same thing with starting out. I think that's another good piece of advice for a writer. We feel like we have to have something to show for it right away. We don't feel like a real writer until we have a book published, but you're a real writer when you're writing. And, this book was no less of a book when I started it than when I finished it. It was a physical book, but it was the time it took to finish it didn't take anything away from it. It gave me more perspective. So if you started a book today and it took you 15 years, it's fine.
Imagine if you rushed and wrote and published this in 2006. It would not be the baby it is today. It's a beautiful book, baby. It's like a 15-year-old child that you have poured your heart and soul into. Yeah, that's really cool. Awesome. Well, where can we find you on social? What are your social handles so that we can all plug into you? What's the best way to plug into you other than following you on Amazon? Everybody make sure you follow Alison here on Amazon so that you don't miss out when she does have a book come out. Sometimes I forget to follow someone and then I look back, I'm like, whoa, you had more books and I missed them. So everybody make sure you hit that follow button here on Amazon. But where else can we follow you?
I am on Goodreads as Alison Larkin. I am on Twitter as Allie Larkin. I'm on Twitter as Allie Larkin. I am on Instagram as Allie Larkin Writes. And I'm on Facebook too. And I actually can't remember if I'm Allie or Alison on Facebook. So I think I'm Allie Larkin still.
That is perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. You guys can grab The People We Keep down below. Such a great book. It's also a really beautiful book. I always love when they have the uneven edge here. Just the details in this book was really awesome. Your publishing team did a fabulous job and your work is beautiful. So we're so happy to have you on the show today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Erin. I'm thrilled to get to talk with you.
Yes, you too. Oh.